Was fondly known as Saint Marsha, a central figure in New York City's gay liberation movement, a model for artist Andy Warhol, and an advocate for transgender and homeless youth. Marsha P. Johnson wore many hats, sometimes literally. They were often adorned with plastic fruit or flowers.
They call me Marsha Payne, no mind Johnson. I try and pay a lot of those things that happen to me in life. Absolutely no mind.
Assigned male at her 1945 birth in Elizabeth, New Jersey, Johnson started wearing clothes made for girls when she was 5, but felt pressured to stop after being sexually assaulted by a 13-year-old boy. As soon as she graduated from high school, she fled across the Hudson River to New York City with just $15 and a bag of clothes. There, she dressed as she pleased. While better than in her hometown, life in New York City could still be hard for those who didn't match societal norms. Cross-dressing was a crime in New York State, and Johnson was sometimes arrested simply for wearing makeup in public. Often unable to find a job and without a permanent residence, she turned to sex work.
Now let's not be pessimistic. I love is worth a try.
Johnson really enjoyed performing in drag. She was part of a drag group called Hot Peaches and took to the stage sporting red heels and bright wigs. Even though the bohemian enclave of Greenwich Village, where Johnson lived, was the focal point of the city's gay life, police still routinely raided gay bars there. During a late-night June 1969 raid on the Stonewall Inn, patrons fought back, and the modern gay rights movement in America was born. Johnson, who was 23 at the time, has wrongly been credited with throwing the first brick of the uprising. She said she didn't arrive at the scene until after the chaos had begun, one of the many transgender women on the front lines that night, because, they said, they had nothing left to lose. Johnson may not have started the Stonewall riot, but for decades to come, she was a key player in the LGBTQ plus rights movement that it sparked, even as many gay and lesbian groups marginalized transgender people.
You never completely have your rights, one person until you all have your rights.
With longtime friend Sylvia Rivera, also a transgender woman, Johnson founded STAR, Street Transvestites Action Revolutionaries. The term transgender was not widely used yet. The political collective supported and housed homeless LGBTQ plus youth and sex workers. During the AIDS crisis that began in the 1980s, Johnson helped spread awareness and raise money. She looked after sick friends even as she struggled with her own mental illness and became HIV positive herself. In 1992, Johnson's body was pulled from the Hudson River. Police first called it suicide, then reclassified it as undetermined, and in 2012 reopened the case, which remains unsolved. She was 46 years old.
And if I die, I hope nobody cries either. I hope you think, get up and dance, party, and have a good time.
Today, her name and legacy live on with the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, which advocates for the rights of Black transgender people.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Marie,
So these flowers are in honor of Marsha.
Yes, I do love it. Okay, okay. This is Christmas. So yes, so thank you, everyone. Cheers to this evening. I hope you can hear me well. I have some issue with my internet connection. Can you hear me?
You sound great.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm very excited. This is our last book review for this year, and what a year! Especially when it comes about LGBTQ plus right in the US and certainly all around the world. I think that it's so important. Christmas is such a great period to come together and to reflect on the ongoing year and also on the next year coming and on everything that we can do better. And I think that one thing that I really love with the book is the fact that it reminds me that the fight for the LGBTQ plus rights is not just in June. It's not just for Pride. It's an ongoing effort. It's a 360-day commitment. And this is the reason why we are having this conversation in December. This is Pride in December. And I think that it's well deserved for the community. So after all of that, my name is Marguerite Kounou. I'm the CEO and founder of My Safe Space. And as usual, I have the pleasure to be surrounded by the most beautiful soul, the most bright-minded ladies. And as usual, as I'm always doing it, because I think that you're the best person to exactly say who you are, you know. And so I'm going to just let you introduce yourself.
Okay, who wants to go first?
You got the mic, Taryn. Go.
Okay. Taryn Talley, marketer, marketing leader, and what I posted yesterday, marketing fixer, kind of think Ray Donovan, but just around marketing and corporate problems. I'm also an advocate for my community, so that's Black and Brown, Indigenous, LGBTQ, 2SIA plus community. So, and I'm happy to be here.
I'll go ahead and jump in next. I'm seeing us in a row, so I figured, this is the lineup from my view. My name's Linda Berberick. I am the founder and chief learning architect at Linda B Learning. I feel like I missed out not meeting Marsha. Like we just missed each other, and I feel like she's my soul sister. So I'm super excited to be talking about this book today because the messaging of the book, the focus on pay it no mind as a life mantra, we're going to talk about that. And also the joy and defiance of her, the actual title of the book. I really want to dig into that. And yeah, so that's me. Daphne, go.
Thank you, Marie-Daphne Lagarde, founder of AfriQueen Consulting, so DEIA advocate. And reading the book brought a lot of memories, but also realizing how much discrimination I was conditioned to believe because of religion, through my parents as well. And I have also a very vivid memory being at New York Penn Station when I encountered people like Marsha for the first time. I was a maybe teenager. Anyways, I'll talk about that because there is a part in the book that really deeply resonated with me and brought me back to that memory. So I'm very excited to be here today.
So yes, I think we have lots of things that needs to be said, and so before to really ask you what are finally your opinion of the book, I want to ask you another question first. Why do you think that Pride should be more than a monthly celebration that happened in June?
Because we exist 365 days a year, right, in the Julian calendar. So, like, it's an everyday occurrence to exist, to survive, to thrive, to live, right? Like, and I feel like Marsha and the rest of the crew back in New York, and Sylvia, who's one of my favorites too. It's just like it was a daily battle for this, right? It's not just something that you get a month and people just think like, okay, everything's focused in this month. There's survival, their fights, right? The harassment, like everything they dealt with and everything all of us deal with, is a daily occurrence, and for me, Pride is about that fight. It's about, the celebratory nature, like even, in the darkest kind of circumstance that they were dealing with, they still find that joy, still find that happiness, right? So like, I feel like for me, like Pride is that 365 joyful warrior, and we just keep pressing forward.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I was just going to build off of what Taryn was saying as well, and that is that first off, remember that the first Pride, and they talk about this in the book, it wasn't exactly welcoming to Marsha at that time, right? So even within the community, there was this notion of, separation. And again, I mean, I put that back into white supremacy and the patriarchy, right? But again, still, these Black trans women are the ones who are emancipating all of us. Because the other big point that we always need to take away from this is that I love how I've got like an M over my face. That's awesome. I don't know if you can see it from your view, but that's what it looks like from my view. It's hilarious. Anyway.
No, I see a big M. So like,
me too.
There we go.
Okay, that's better.
I feel like it was like a smiley face sticker or something put over. I'm like, but I already have a big smiley face, so you don't need to do that. Now Buddy's going to go freak out. But yeah, it's just the emancipation is for all of us, right? And the ability to be our own authentic, true selves is really the bigger picture here, and that's why we all should be invested in this fight, right? It's not just about this one small, discrete group of people, because like I said, even in that even within the community, there was that notion of othering that was happening. And I love also, just Marsha's pay it no mind, like what that actually means philosophically. And if we think we're not fighting the same battles today, I will remind you of Jinx Monsoon, who was made famous on RuPaul's Drag Race, right? Without Marsha, we wouldn't have RuPaul. And without RuPaul, we wouldn't have Jinx. And one of Jinx's famous catchphrases is water off a duck's back, which is essentially the same message, right? And this is decades later after Marsha's passing. So these are still real battles that we're fighting. It's the emancipation for all of us.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would like to add to that is I really admire how Marsha took care of the young queens. And what really broke my heart throughout the story is we need to be reminded, every day that young children, marginalized children, are forced to flee their homes because they are subjected to a high level of abuse from their families. And then they run into the streets, and then what do they find? Predators. And I would just really love how Marsha became the mom figure, having gone through that, and then how she was able to transcend all of the violence and display a high level of compassion for her sisters, the young ones. I just love that mother energy she displayed throughout her life, in spite of her own trauma. So yes, we need to be reminded every day that those kids have no business being in the streets. They should be loved and accepted just the way they are.
Agree.
Yes, and that's the reason why I ask you this question, because I'm always very fascinated. We have a conversation with Terry, and it was I think a few days ago, and I told her that I'm just fascinated by the obsession that lawmakers and politicians have over like people bodies, whether it is woman bodies, or it is transgender bodies, or anybody else bodies. And I think that everything is related. There is no hierarchy of oppression. And in the introduction at the beginning of the book, I love the fact that the book started with the commemoration of the Black Lives Matter movement, and that during one of the manifestation, transgender people joined to remind the world that Black transgender lives matters too. And I think that the book is so important. I think if you are not familiar with the LGBTQ plus history, and I don't think that this history is actually taught in school. If you are not familiar with the history of the LGBTQ plus right, if you haven't done any sex or gender like studies, you are totally unfamiliar with the experience of the LGBTQ plus community, the history. I wasn't familiar with. I watched the Netflix. Actually, watched the Netflix documentary about Marsha a few years ago. I watched like a few Netflix documentary about the Stonewall, and my fascination really for this book is that, and it's a question also for you, Taryn. It's obvious that a lot uh, of people are like people that are not member of the LGBTQ plus community maybe don't know this history, but it's also interesting to understand, and that's what I love with the fact that Tourmaline represents this young generation, is that actually I think that there is a lot of history itself within the community that is not known about the events. And I just want your takeaway of that. I watched some documentaries, and people were really celebrating Marsha, also the story of Marsha and the book itself, because this history is often not often studies in school. And so, it's like an oral tradition. It's something that you have to tell to your neighbor or to tell to your siblings or friends. And if you're not telling the story, people are telling the story, so nobody knows. So what's your feedback on that? Do you think that there is that the young generation is aware of that history?
I mean, I think in the community, the younger generation is learning the history. I've seen some of the younger generation ignore the elders, ignore the history, kind of forge their own path, and generations will do that. I feel like, as we share content, right, around Pride or the broader community, like we have to recognize, and I think the book did a really good job of covering this, right? Like as Marsha recalls herself, right? Just her memories of Stonewall and what happened. Whenever we recall memories of events that happen, it's reconstruction of that event. It's not a playback of exactly what happened, right? So like a lot of people will challenge history, right? And be like, oh, well, yeah, she didn't throw this. She said this, she said that. And I think like Tourmaline really does it with grace, right? And I think it's important to understand the history. And I'll tie this into something that happened to me around June. So there's a Tenderloin museum. So the Tenderloin in San Francisco is a huge trans community, right? One of the epicenters for trans rights in the country. So I went to a play that talked about that first riot that they had, right? Where the brown trans woman throws a hot cup of coffee at a cop, right? And then it breaks into a riot, and just like it's the same harassment they felt in New York. So I want to point out that as we talk about this, some folks oversimplify things to where it's like just Stonewall, right? It's Cooper Donuts in LA in 1959. It is Dewey's Restaurant in Philly in 1965. Compton's Cafeteria riot, 66, San Francisco. Back to the Black Cat Tavern in LA in 67. Then Stonewall in 69. So over the course of a decade, there were like incursions between between the police and and the state authority to the community, right? And I think it's just like, as I was just going through the book and like hearing the narrative, it just, so many things popped up to me, like the arguments against why it exists now, right? Never existed back in like the Leave It to Beaver days. If you read this book, you know damn well there were so many regressive laws that they had to deal with, right? Like, think about this. You had to wear 3 pieces of clothing of the gender you were born in, or you'd be arrested, right? And then you have cops like sexually assaulting people, right? You have them harassing, targeting, throwing people in jail for 50, 60 days at a time. Like, that's when you think about it, and I'm going to flash forward to 2025, where Americans are nice and overfed and cushy, right? Not many people would want to experience that kind of thing. And to me, it just hammers home the history that we have has to be paid attention to. We have to keep it alive. We have to continue to tell the stories. We have to give the grace to the people who actually were there doing their thing. So like, let's not have arguments in the community about who threw the brick and who didn't throw the brick. It's the event itself that's important, right? And I feel like, as you listen or read this book, that it's like, it's very clear that the government is laser focused on suppression, right? And the police. I'm kind of disgusted by like just the New York City cops, of like what they did, and knowing some of the cops in San Francisco, right? Like what they did around the Compton cafeteria riot. It's like, I mean, I would say that they'd be arrested and tried themselves for some of the crimes that they committed, but so it's a history that we have to keep alive, right? And we have to recognize it. We have to share it. We have to proselytize it. One thing I will say is how Marsha focused on the youth, right? Kind of like that drag mother, that queen mother, right? Of like taking care of the people. When you think about that, who is the US government targeting right now? It is not, well, partially me, but it's also partially targeting, and I say probably partially, it's targeting trans youth, right? They are picking people off between the ages of 6 and 18. So like, they are forcing a lifestyle on somebody that they say natural, but they're targeting the youth. And who were these leaders in the community protecting? Those young kids, right, out the street, keeping an eye on them, protecting them, helping them, getting them housed, right? Like, there's a reason why they're targeting you, right? Because that's how this community just continues to extend and expand. So, sorry, I just did a soapbox, y'all, but I had a few things on my mind that I had to say. So.
Well, it's good to share the actual history too, because that's something that sits in my craw quite a bit as well. It's like, it wasn't just Stonewall. I mean, come on. And what I really love about this book too, is this notion of critical confabulation, right? That it is blending history with imaginative storytelling. I'm literally doing that right now with my own little joint that I've got going with the story of the Gemini twin, exactly the same kind of treatment. But what I think is that most of what we know about Marsha comes out of trauma, right? The negative things, reports, that kind of thing. And that's what I find extends to almost all people get to know about marginalized people in general, and trans folks in particular, is their trauma, instead of all the other things that having a more diverse community that's accepting of people as they are brings to bear. The creativity, the joy, the unique outlook, the unique perspective. Those are all the things that our current administration is trying to contain, right? And that's a big reason why we're seeing people being targeted who are being targeted. But, Tourmaline said this herself, is that to tell a story that is true, whether or not the archive or the newspapers affirmed it. Because it's honoring that non-standard memory, right? In addition to all the trauma that Marsha experienced, She also experienced, she was neurodivergent, PTSD. So she had her own stuff that she had to take care of while also being this saintly, motherly, caregiving person herself. So, I mean, it's just, and even the whole notion of mutual aid goes well counter to this notion of capitalism, especially under a Trump administration. I mean, my God, so I can see, like, it is not at all surprising to me that we are seeing this cycle of pain being, because that's how progress works, right? It's cycles. It's still, I think, like this kind of movement forward, but it's always a cycling back. And when you look at Marsha's life, you see it. You see some of the same struggles. When you look at shows like Queer as Folk from the 90s, that's 20 years later. And then you look at where we are today. Like, you can see repetitions, but you can also see forward motion. So that's what keeps me hopeful. And I think the forward motion really comes from focusing again on the joy aspect, which is really what Marsha was all about. And you learn about that in this book.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I am
it's
a
that
little
spirit,
bit
right?
conflicted. I am a little bit conflicted on the question of joy, because when I was reading the book, and I think it's fascinating because with all the book reviews that we have done so far, I feel like that there is a common thread around every story. I'm going to let also Marie Daphne give me an opinion on that. But I think that I've seen that playbook way too often. The way I would say, I don't particularly like the term marginalized, but I will use like oppressed community, Black people, the LGBTQ plus communities, the indigenous community, everybody that has been oppressed has no choice than to find joy. I mean, and find joy and find heart. Like, I mean, you look, for example, at the Black community, like how creative, how talented Black people, African American are. If you look at the LGBTQ plus community, how talented, creative, no doubt they are. But the question is it a choice? Is joy a choice, or like a choice that you make because that's a choice, that's a multiple option, or because it is at the end of the day the only option that you have, because the pain is too heavy. And I mean, I was conflicted by this notion of joy, because I think that joy and trauma come together, and I think that the joy is the way to cope with the trauma, is the way to cope with every day people looking at you, people discriminating you, people insulting you, policymakers like trying to deny your identity, your existence. I mean, it's nuts. And I wanted to have your point of view, Marie Daphne, on that, due to your background in diversity and inclusion. But I see joy not always like something that as an option within multiple option, but as the only option that those communities sometimes have to just keep on going like another day.
Yeah, I think in this case, joy, like from the point of view of Marsha, it was probably like a weapon to not fall into that hatred, because at some point in the book it is mentioned that, what kind of society do we want? Do we want to become like the oppressor? And that was never like the point for her. It was really clear that she just wanted like equal rights. And I think joy really allowed her to navigate the system, allowed her to navigate through life. Because even as I was reading, the amount of abuse that she was subjected to by her mom, God, I would hate my mom if I had gone like to only half of the level of the pain. And God knows I don't have like the greatest relationship with my mom, but just that, being beaten up just because you want to wear a dress. And on the flip side of that, the system is really trying hard to have you conform into like a gender specific morality. um Anyways, I don't know where that comes from, but she seemed to have this desire to just live the way she wants, and she find a way through joy to radiate that light. I don't know how else to explain it, but from a spiritual standpoint, she was just like this bubble of light, and I think she was born with that determination because she seemed to have been born with a mission. And I feel that she carries that mission with the joy and undeniable, like unapologetic joy, carried her through this whole fight, and then being able to to be that mother figure. Um, yeah, for me, I saw it like that. That was like her weapon. That was her weapon.
100% saw it the same way, Daphne. I didn't think of it as like a coping mechanism so much as I thought it as emotional sovereignty, but yes, she wore her pay it no mind attitude philosophy as her armor for sure, because the world was cruel against her, right? And but her lesson really was, if you don't pay the oppressor any mind, you deny them a power over your own internal state, because you do have another option. The other option, of course, is to unalive yourself, which is what they want. And so when you choose joy, you actively choose joy, you're denying them that power over you. And the application is a blueprint for mental health for activists. So you need to be able to sustain your movement, to keep it going when people keep trying to push you down. And you see this, I mean, you read about the involvement with the Black Panthers, right? I mean, this is not all accidental. This is all similar approaches to mutual aid and mutual approaches to find the joy, tune out the noise of those who would wish for your disappearance. So I don't see it as, I agree, Marguerite, that it's a necessity, but the other option is playing into what people would wish for you. And it's an act of defiance to find joy. I reframe it that way. It's an act of defiance to claim your joy when people would wish you otherwise.
But do you have,
Okay.
and that's the question, and I'm gonna also ask your opinion on that of Taryn, is that what over choice? What gets me like, because I'm not that much. I'm still working on giving the over shake when somebody slap me, and I think that I am so done after all the book readings that we have done, book review that we have done. I am so done with that playbook. And also, the reason why I asked this question is that because I read the critics, I read the book, I read the title, and it's about joy. But the question is, as you said, as you mentioned, what other choice do you have when you are under so much oppression that at a certain point, the only thing that might come to your mind is to end your life. And then joy become the only option, not giving power to the oppressor over your mind. For joy is the only option, because if you don't have the option, this is too much. I mean, who can go? I can't. I was having this conversation, and I want you. I'm sorry, I'm very hard on that, and I want you, Terry, to jump here. Is that what other option are we giving to transgender people right now, except being resilient, except finding joy, and except tuning the noise, and except fighting? And I think they fight, and they are good fighters. That's the part that I love the most. And yes, joy is there, but I'm really concerned about, is joy not at a certain point in somebody's mind, in an individual mind, the only option to actually
You
keep
could
on
always
moving on?
conform too. That's always an option, is just conform. So I would really push back on you have no other option. There's lots of other options. But Taryn, I interrupted. It was getting to me. It's like, are you kidding me? So
yeah, I'm going to weigh in here on a couple of things. So in the later chapters of the book, right, they talk about her spirit and how she lived and I actually was at an event on Thursday and I said the same thing. I didn't get to the chapter yet on Thursday, but it was in the tail end of the book. And I was sharing some of the journey. So like, I don't know if you all know, but I've been beaten in my underwear, surrounded by 3 people larger than me, kicking me in the stomach. I have been inappropriately touched by men. I have been assaulted by a security officer in another country. I have had all kinds of shit with me, right? So I was sharing part of that journey and part of my French, but that's just who I am. She looked at me, and this woman who I'm talking to is, I believe, is cis and white. And she said to me, she goes, "Your energy is amazing." She goes, "You're not bitter at all. You're not broken. You're not like beaten down." And I looked at her and I said, "Do you know why? Because what you see when you talk to me, what you see when you're standing in front of me, it's liberty and freedom. It is survival, right? Another day of survival and living as a free fucking spirit, right?" And they talked about Marsha with that freedom, right? The things that she endured and that she went through. And you're right, Marie Daphne. I would have hated my fucking mom. Like, as I was reading that, I was getting like visibly angry, right? Because I wouldn't be like, "Let me tell you something, bitch." Like, that's not to you, but like to her mom, right? Because I felt like it's so hurtful to have that in your life. But given all of that, everything that she has been through, she has never had to compromise herself. She has been a free bird, a free spirit, right? Supporting, loving, caring, fighting the fight and doing what she needs to do. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't see it as much as like, hey, you've got to have joy or it's just, something else. I'm like, our quest, and this is for me specifically and some other folks in the community that I know, but it is the freedom to express ourselves as we are, right? Like, regardless of being beat down, I will take a beating in the street from this fascist government and still be light in spirit because I am free. They can never take that away from me. I will die free, right? And I feel like that's part of like the joy. That's part of her spirit, right? Is like having that freedom to exist and fighting for it. And no matter what, you're still there. You know what I mean? So like, I do it from a different angle, and it's kind of built from my personal experience, right? Is I will never let them dictate how I am or how I treat people, right? I will be that soul until that soul no longer exists. That's it.
And I actually wrote down a quote from Tourmaline as well that speaks exactly to that. And she said, "To pay it no mind is to pay attention to something else, something more divine, more free, more beautiful."
There you go. That's
another part of it too. Like, I don't know if any of you have gone through this exercise. It took me a couple decades to figure this out. But I started understanding, and as I transitioned in 2020, I finally found the divinity that has been in myself. And that's what shows. That's what comes out in the spirits, right? That's what comes out in how we engage in the world. When you find that divinity, when you find that freedom and liberty, right? It is amazing. Like, even on this, like I call it a backwater star system in an immense cosmos, right? Mm-hmm. It is stunning and beautiful, and it feels good. And I always say to people, when I hear people say trans joy, I'm like, fuck that. I'm like, it's joy, right? Like, it's just like,
it's just joy.
There's just legitimate, there's legitimate happiness, right? So.
Thank you for mentioning that, Taryn, because I have found my divinity through menopause.
Right? There's a transformation that happens. Yeah.
It is. And the book makes allusion to that divinity, that spirituality. And I'm so glad that the author touched upon that, because to the point that you were making earlier, Taryn, being beat up the way you have and the way Marsha has, because ultimately that's what the system wants. They want to beat you to the point that you give up on yourself. And the fact that you make the choice to still stand and say, you know what, motherfuckers, you don't like my light. Sorry, I'm swearing. You don't like my light. I'm gonna shine it brighter. Just it's not just to piss them off, but the expression "kill them with kindness."
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna
Oh,
do? Because sometimes violence is just not an option. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna kill you with my light.
Yeah,
You
joy
don't like
and
it? Look away.
defiance. Joy and
Exactly.
defiance. It's
There you
amazing.
go.
Yes.
There you go.
And when the two coincide, the one
Yeah.
action produces both. Excellent.
It is.
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And the reason why I was asking you that question so much, it's because I'm often trying when I'm reading books, and I'm always trying to find a certain how can I say that, um, a certain universal humanity. And when I was reading the book, and the reason why I asked you that much question about joy is because I had like an horrible childhood. My relationship with my mother wasn't good, and I will be honest, Marie Daphne, I made the choice to to I will say forgive but not forget. And I think that I understand that I loved her, but I also understand that it was not okay and that it was like a boundary for me to set. But I was thinking while I was reading the book, I was thinking, you talk about divinity, and I always thought actually that we are coming in this world and we are free. And I was like reflecting on everything that happened in my childhood, and I was like, it's why I have been so resilient. And I always thought that it was actually a gift of God, and that it was actually God give me that resilience and that ability to go through everything, because he knew what I will go through. So he gave me the skills, to take some magical penciling and to repent as a child, to repent in reality, to just go through that. And I actually use joy like much more as as you say, a weapon or an armor that was keeping me to move on. But I wasn't still in the deep. And the thing is that, she's very spiritual. And I think that's the big thing in that book. She do understand that there is something more than the material. There is this spirituality in the way she's moving through life, in the way she's building community, in the way she's taking care of other people. But at the same time, and I think that a lot of us can do that. And I remember a time in my life when I would choose joy to keep on moving on, to to stand up in the world and to exercise my freedom and to just go through another day. But and I was still participating, but I still feel the pain. And that's the only thing that worries me a little bit, and that always has worried me with Pride and the celebration of Pride in June, is that I want people to not forget also that as much as individuals can show resilience and they can express that joy, it's up to them to focus on that joy, to use the joy, but it's also up to us as a community to remember that there is pain, and that as a community, like even if they are going through the motion, like I mean the stress, the precarity, Martha was poor, and I mean she had nothing, but she has everything, because at the same time she had community, and she has that joy, and she has that defiance. But it's also up to us to remember that the condition and the situation are not are it's not normal. And And even if people are doing well and are smiling and are going and doing whatever they need to do and using that joy as a weapon and that spirituality, society and politicians and communities cannot forget that it's a very painful, daily painful experience.
I just wanted to add
And
one
that
more
was
thing.
it.
Sorry, my dog he always decides to bark whenever I go off mic. It just got me thinking too about, so Kafre J publishes an unapologetically Black newsletter that comes out of the Bay Area. And he literally posted one this week that says they don't want to see us happy. So the other part of it, it's not about forgetting the harm, but there's so much hyper focus on the trauma in the news, like this is what's happening here. It's also, again, it's kind of meant to beat you down, to focus on the trauma that trans folks experience, right? And quite honestly, to your more general point, Marguerite, oppressed people experience, right? And so I think that, as much as we can showcase joy, what happens from that is a couple of things. One, you get the benefit of, basking in something that genuinely makes you feel connected with your own divinity. I mean, that's what I mean when I talk about finding your joy. But you also show the world what it looks like for you, because I think that's a part of it too. It comes out of jealousy in terms of, I don't know how to be happy, so I'm going to try and make you miserable. And then we see this beautiful art. And is the art an expression of the pain, or is it something that is there that we're now just being able to recognize because we haven't just focused on the pain and the trauma and all the things that we are trying to focus on to keep? It's almost like, talking about history of enslaved folks here as that being the only thing to understand about history of enslaved people. Like there was other things to understand besides the facts of slavery, that there's a whole history of a beautiful people behind this. I think that's the same with trans folks. So it's recognizing when we're bringing out our personal joy, our approach to our art. Like drag only became popular relatively recently. And with drag popularization, we did start to see, even though people will confuse drag and trans as being one and the same, they're not, right? They're not. One is an art form. One is literally a way of, aspect of humanity, I guess, is in more, to not use any kind of derogatory term. But yeah, I mean, it's like so much focus is already on trauma, bad, to make you feel a certain kind of way. And especially with social media, being able to pipe right into your home. So yeah, I think joy is a lot deeper to me. I mean, that's for me. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like I said, I mean, I don't know if I ever feel truly joy. So yeah. But I do feel divinity. I do feel like, just power, and freedom and liberty. So I've always been a fighter. So I'm not going to go down on one knee and get beaten by a subspecies. So it's not going to happen for me. So I do think it's very interesting in the book, with the Black Panther, kind of just the intersection. Right? So I think that it's important to remember for everyone is it's, if your feminism isn't intersectional, if you're not fighting for all communities, right? Fighting for none. So that's vision is how evil wins. And it's supporting those mutual aid efforts, supporting the greater whole, right? Like that in the community. And it's that's where, we can survive, thrive, and continue to exist. So the intersectionality was a very strong message out of the book for me too.
Well, she was talking about intersectionality before intersectionality was a thing. Honestly, that's kind of what I took
exactly. Away. Yeah, we're just getting out of the second or third wave of feminism, right? Where it was and intersectionality was already. I mean, as I'm looking at this image here, it says performance as resistance. So if any of y'all are ever in the San Francisco area, Shane Zalvadar, I love Shane. She is the pop-up drag queen, trans woman, trans woman, But in San Francisco, she does protest on the streets of the waterfront, right?
Awesome.
So like to that point
Awesome.
where drag being a performance, and she's also one of the actresses in the Compton Cafeteria Riot show that I was earlier. So like just doing art as protest and bringing these topics up. It's something that in my own personal community, where I'm seeing and I indulge in. And
I just would like
really,
to circle back.
sorry,
Just circle back
I was
to what
answering the
Mark.
dog.
Okay.
I swear he's a silencer, right? He's like, how dare you? Yeah. So I don't know. He's not even in the same room. So please, sorry about the interruption, Daphne.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to circle back to what Margaret mentioned about the fact that, Marsha was very, very poor. But one thing that really struck me is that, yes, they lived in the margins of society. They didn't have like fixed homes and stuff like that, and they were hustling a lot. So in the first like chapters, the Times Square's hustler. So I just want to recount like a memory, a very vivid memory that came through. But let me just read the excerpt. So they were caring for each other through warnings about police or sharing tips about where to stay the night. When they could not afford a hotel, the girlies would sleep in Port Authority among bus travelers or at Grand Central Station, which was a favorite. They'd carry little bags with their toothbrushes and toothpaste, washing in the bathroom and curling up in their bags, pretending to be travelers and sleeping in the wooden waiting rooms of Grand Central. So the memory that I got relating to that, so most of my family members who left Haiti back in the 60s, 70s, most of them settled in New York. My parents made the choice to come to Canada, but we would visit very often, at least once or twice a year. As a child, up until I was like a young adult, I would go to New York. New York was like my second home. But I remember, I think we were on our way out of New York. So we were at Central Station. So I was with my mom and probably like an uncle who dropped us off at the station to take the train to head back to Montreal. And I remember seeing these groups of, to me, they look like women. I was probably like 10, 11 years old, not knowing much about life. They look like women to me. And my uncle made a comment, is like, no, there are a bunch of guys dressed as women. And then I looked again and I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. They look good. And then my mom, of course, made a derogatory comment, but I could not help but look at like how beautiful they were. And as I was reading that part of the book, it really like propelled me to that very specific moment where I knew not much about life. But then when my uncle made the comment, like they're just like a bunch of men dressed as women, and then later on in the book, they go through how the police were giving like these powers by voting these regulations about how to dress, and how they would like pick them apart and humiliate them. And then going back in that period where I was faced with that phenomenon, I had no idea of the amount of suffering. And it just go back to the joy. um I guess to a certain extent, it's not so much it's a choice, yes. But if you're gonna be surviving within those conditions and not turn mad, well, you better have some joy. You better be equipped with some joy. So just having like that memory, and now with the experience that I have today, and be able to go back and realizing, oh my God, like the level of pain and shame that they were subjected to. Like I had no idea. Of course, I was a young child and not knowing much about life, but It's just so funny when you read something and then how far back it takes you. So I was just like very grateful for that moment, revisiting that moment by reading this book. So thank you for making that recommendation. Because like I said, I had no idea. I had no idea.
Buddy's just barking again, so it must be my cue to talk. See, there he goes. One other thing that I was thinking of that comes out of the last chapter of her legacy too, that I have to mention, being the person that I am with all the whatever witchy vibes that I got going on, is her whole focus on the Marsha vibration, right? That radical vibe shifting is part of how she used joy as a tool for activism as well, right? That she was focused on survival, but also on the vibe. So survival for herself during the AIDS crisis, she was, instead of focusing on the collective and legislation, she was focusing on visiting individual people. So it's knowing when to have a broad focus versus a narrow focus. And that, I think, is just tuning into, the vibe, honestly. And so when you look at the last point of the spiritual connection, it's the vibration piece too. And maybe people who aren't into that kind of stuff don't really pick up on that, but I certainly do. And that's part of why I feel like, I missed Marsha, because I think I would have enjoyed meeting her and experiencing that vibration in real life. I think that would have been so cool. But even seeing on video presentation of her, I'm just like, oh yeah, there it is. It was much, much more than just her own personal survival. It really was about contributing to the overall vibe.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I moved back from New York to Delaware in '85, but it's like I was, in the city in the mid '80s. In college, I would club in the city, and stay with a friend of mine across the river. So it's just like that energy, right? Like I've been to some of the areas that they were in, right? And it's like, so it just kind of took me back to my youth a little bit. But it'd be funny, Linda, if we were in the same space, in that space at the same time, way back in the day. That would have been killer.
Yeah.
But yeah. But so I think for me, the other thing that I found detestable out of it, right, other than the judges and the cops, and yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, but I am one of the people that believe that if you're not standing up against bad policing, like as a cop yourself, then all cops are not, they need work. For them to exploit these groups of people for their own sexual gratification for free, that they beat down on, that they chastise, that they hurt. Mm-hmm. I thought the last and final insult for me was like, as they explored Marsha's death, right? And whether it's a suicide or not a suicide, it's like, right? It's I saw it as like the way they treated her body. That to me was incredibly offensive, right? To just leave her displayed like that for a period of time, because I'll just be honest for myself. It's like I do feel like this to people all the time. I don't feel like I've been granted the cheese, right? So like, and that hit home because it felt like that was the final insult, right? It's like how you care for the dead speaks to me at a cultural level, and I found that to be incredibly detestable, and as far as I'm concerned, I hope the karma that those cops throughout their engagement in the last 20, 30 years they were beating down people was strong, because I just feel like at the end, not even dignity at the end, but her people came, her community came, right, supporting her, but just the state, how they handled it was horrific, and I all wish them a nice, speedy journey to hell.
Yeah, may they have the conclusion they deserve.
my new
I
salutation
was
is may your knife chip and shatter, mother effer.
You should say
fascinated.
that. Just a
I
flash.
was
Yeah.
fascinated by a level of spirituality, and I was fascinated also by the stories when she was going to church, and how she take like some symbolism from the Christian religion, and she was building those altar like she learned at the church, but she was adding some glitter. And when I was reading those page to come back to you, Taryn, I just remember something that someone teach me one day is that we at the end of the day we belong to God, and like whatever, like Jesus, you choose it, we become to something more spiritual,
Yeah.
and become in this world spiritual, and the rules of this world actually, for a lot of people it's a physical world, it's not a spiritual world. So what does apply in this earth doesn't apply in the domain of the spiritual and the domain of God. So the thing is that I'm coming back to all the book reviews that we have done, and to any and to history. I found myself very asked uh, on this question: is there any justice in history? And I came to the conclusion that I don't think that there is justice in history. To be honest, I wasn't surprised by the way they handle like a body, because I know how they handle a life. And you it requires it's death is not it's not just about death, it's how we treat people, and the way you treat the living people is how you treat your dead. And that's also what is fascinating with the transgender history, that transgender have been in this world and on this earth for so long. Yeah, like we talk about that there in like different tribe recognize, and different culture recognize that there is not only like two sex and two gender. So it's like everything, it's a construct, it's a desire like of possession, it's a desire of domination, and that's a human desire. And I think that with everything that she has done, I think that her soul was really in a good place. I think she go back where she belong. And at the end of the day, they didn't handle a body the way that they should with consideration, but they didn't handle a life and take care of a life with consideration. So there is, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sarcastic or dark, but
They were consistent, yes.
why we expect people that keep on doing the same things over and over across history with no mercy, no kindness, no consideration for the human life. And why do you expect that they will take? Why should we want to expect the best, but at the end of the day, the way you treat the living, the way you treat the dead, and that's what they did with
Yeah.
her body. But what they miss, the piece that they miss, the most beautiful piece, is that she doesn't belongs like to them. She belongs to something higher, and she did her piece, and she did well.
She belongs to her people, right? That's
Exactly.
what we belong to as our people. Like, even
Yep.
if I'm killed by the state here, right? I belong to my people, and they can't change that. They can drag my body through the street,
No,
and it's not going to change that. So, like, like the old saying that history is written by the victor. My twist on
That
that
part.
is history is written by the colonizer. So, like, yeah, I don't see history as kind. It's on Earth. I found it incredibly frustrating, right? That we have to keep relitigating these things. Well, you
and that's
people
nice.
didn't
The
exist.
term is not frustrating, is like actually very nice.
Well, I mean, it's like this: you people didn't exist in 1950, and then you'll read or listen to this book, and you're like, holy crap! Like there was so much at stake here for them, right?
Yeah.
That like they went out of their way. The Lavender Scare, Eisenhower, like, I mean, I wrote down two things about like the discrimination discrimination. New York, highly discriminatory. California, when they were talking about what California did back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, you know, lobotomy, castration, and electric shock therapy, right? So I don't know many people would volunteer to expose themselves to them, right? Like, so I came out to my mom in 2020, you know, and she was like, well, I never knew anybody back then. I said, that's because if your teacher was like me, they were fired and beaten into like being unhoused and probably, you know, substance addict. You know, they would have been wiped from society. Students would have been beaten up or, you know, sent to an institution. Like, that's why you didn't know anybody back in the day like that. The fear was real, right? And like that history and where we come from is disturbing. And then seeing it come back around with a whole bunch of you know, the poster childs for you know, what they call white supremacy, but it's like when they're bringing that shit back, right? Youth again, targeting healthcare when they were fighting just to get some HRT, right? Fighting for like you know, reproductive services, you know, and then of course with HIV, you know, it's like you're seeing things like the Trump administration just stopped an HIV/AIDS program that George W. Bush put in, right? That saves millions of lives, right? Of people that are Black and brown. And they got rid of that, right? They have pulled back funding on that. So like it literally feels like we're going back to that 70s, 80s kind of thing, that vibe and that energy. And maybe that's only because of the mentality of the despot. You know, when he was in Studio 54 and flying down to so many special islands, it just resonated between the 70s and 80s. But like, that's kind of like, it felt like as much as it was the past, it felt like some of it is coming back. Right?
Yeah.
See, and I would
History
even
repeating itself. History repeating itself.
Over
And-
and over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
but I would push back. I would push back a little bit, right? And you already said this too, Daphne. I saw that it's told by the story, you know, his story. I would push back that people have always existed, and the only people that knew about it were the people who were trusted with that information. That was true then. That is true now. There's tons of people, some of my brother's friends, who don't know anybody who's, you know, any part of the community, never mind someone who's trans, versus someone like myself. It's like I could probably count, you know, it's like I wouldn't even know, I would lose count. And starting from a very young age. I mean, I literally met my first trans person when I was 4 years old. So, I mean, it really is a matter of trust. And it's a matter of when you know better, you do better. And so the younger you learn these things, and what I love about the generation coming up now is that, no, you can't take this away from us. And even with deepfake video, with all of that, it's like, I know what I know, and I'm not going to stand for it. I love that about this generation. I think it's a matter of, especially those of us who come, like Gen Xers are often described as being, you know, you lived through the whole drink from the fire hose, you know, forgotten generation. So, you know, in my day, that kind of thing. But I think, you know, taking the lesson, and also I think Gen Xers also have the opportunity to be the most adaptable because we are right there in the middle. So I think listen to the lessons of the generation that's coming up in terms of there is another way. It doesn't have to just be trauma and relive your trauma over and over and over again and inflict it on the people who come up. Because I think that that's where that came from, is that we're trying to pass on that trauma. And there's finally a generation that's going, oh, you want to give this to me? How about I just go, no, thanks. I'm not taking that. I'm going to find a different way. And so it's about taking that mentality and you know, building it up. So every time we get the pushback that go more aggressive, it's like, no. Let's think about this differently. Let's use this, you know, let's add this as another tool to our toolkit, but keep being defiant, keep resisting.
But the thing is that, are we really, Marie-Daphne, I think before I jump in, I think you wanted to say something.
No. I was just agreeing with what Linda just said.
Yeah. But, you know, I was like, every generation thinks that they are doing better than the previous one. And I don't know if you've seen like there was a Trump chat leak about the young Republican having a chat, a racist chat actually, where they were calling people by name, by the N words, and so on and so on. And they were young people, huh? you know. And I think that every generation thinks that they are doing better. And I think that actually we are not doing better because we are still not learning our history. And what I mean by our history is the fact that transgender people are always been there on this earth existing, that there is culture like with not only like two sex, two definition of that two sex, that actually, it's just that we stop, like when people say that they want to ban Black History Month, we should be all in the streets and like maybe throwing bricks, huh? Come on, a little bit. When they are going after the transgender rights and they are doing the mess that they are doing right now, maybe we should throw some brick, because I think that it's just that the young generation. I was really shocked when I see the leak of and there is a lot of young people like on TikTok and over chat or even on YouTube that actually do represent like this far right Republican Party. And the thing is that Trump is just like the tree that hide the forest. The thing is that people were looking. I think that there is some people that were tired of behaving that deeply, were tiring like of like practicing like this non-hatred, and I can't talk shit about and I can't wish hate to my neighbors. And when Trump as a leader came to the power, he gave the legitimacy to people that were like in the dark, because we were in this society where we were pushing those values. It's actually when the value are going and he brings all the values down, that now people are free to say what they were thinking all the way long while we were sleeping and thinking that it has disappeared. But it has never been disappeared. It was just that as a society we raised like the values or standard in terms of value high, and because we um, rise our value system, those people feel like I cannot talk. I cannot say what I'm really thinking right now because I'm gonna be cancelled. But now on that you have the president of the United States like saying and like bringing the bar so low, like people are free to say what they were thinking all year long about women's, about feminism, about transgender, about Black people, about a society that they don't want, because deep down inside of them they feel better like just bringing that hate and like in the world. And I think that we need to be careful. I think that when we tend to think that things are getting better generally, that's where we get cooked,
Yeah,
in the
if I
trap.
may add,
Yes,
Margaret,
go ahead.
to your point, yes, we have to be careful because, but I think the phenomenon that's actually happening is that a lot of people are awakening to the fact, to all the bullshit that we've been fed with. And this is disruptive to the system in place. So that's why you see that they're trying everything in their power to muzzle people, keep people down and stuff like that. But it's because on the flip side, there is an awakening. Because when I watch like YouTube, yes, there's a lot of garbage on YouTube, but there's a lot of awakened people.
Of
I'm
course.
learning more about the history, of Afro descendant, like myself, than I've ever learned when I was in elementary school. Because in elementary school and even in high school, I was socialized to believe that we were inferior. I was going to go through racism and I just had to shut up and accept it. Well, no more. No
Yeah.
more. And it's really real. And I think this is really like shaking the foundation on which the system was currently built. So I think, yes, we have to be careful, but we must remain hopeful that we have a great opportunity to shift things, and things are shifting whether we
It's a
like it or
big
not. But
opportunity.
it's
Yes.
really up to us to say, okay, let's not get another system of oppression opposed upon us. This is our moment to just like go at it and say, no more of this bullshit. Let's create something that's actually sustainable, that we respect the earth, that respect like everybody regardless of their gender, race, because all of that, like you said before, it's construct. That's all it is. It's construct. We just have to wake up, smell the bomboclat coffee, as Jamaican would say, smell the coffee, and just reimagine what life can be. It can be better than what we've been. Like seriously, how much worse do we have to endure to realize that we have the power, we the people have the power.
Yes, and that's the reason
Yeah,
why
no, I
I
keep seeing
can't
it.
wait to see how it ends, how you get rid of Trump in 2028, and how it's going in the US with the next, because I think that you have like some, is it midterm or what, how do you call that? You have some election coming with the Democrat and the
Yeah,
Republican.
it's a midterm
Yes, you have
election.
the
Yes.
midterm. Yes. And I think that it's actually, I'm watching very closely what's going on in the US, because this is the moment where we will finally understand if people have learned history, have learned from the previous months, and how far and how strong are people like willing to fight. So, um, Linda, you wanted to say something, Taryn?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I was just saying that um, Americans as a people are woefully educated about their own history. I mean, for me, like through school, like kindergarten to 12th grade, before college, I didn't learn the true history of some of my peoples until I was like 18, 19, and it radicalized me. And I was like, what in the whiteness is this crap, right? Like, it's just like a spoon fed, redefining to your point. It's like you learn what the victors or what the colonizers want, right? But when you understand, and I'm grateful for social media for that, because I mean, of Black history in America, like I existed. I don't think I learned about Tulsa's massacre until I was like 51 or 52. Like I saw it on social media. I'm like, what the? And then I started digging because I started digging in. I'm like, holy shit. There was like 100 race massacres like throughout 2 centuries. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, why are we not sharing that? Oh, wait. It makes like Johnny Doe feel that his ancestors came over from England unwashed and unbathed and eradicated the natives and, purchased human beings and then beat them into submission. Yeah, like that must be really hard to suffer with your ancestors' crimes. Meanwhile, we're expected to swallow the fact that our ancestors were kidnapped from Africa or they were
Yeah,
just eradicated completely.
Yeah,
exactly. And the irony of that
Yeah,
is that when you look at pictures about lynching, there were children who were attending those lynching. And then today you're going to tell me,
yeah.
oh, I don't want my child to go through, what was that course, the critical race theory? I don't want my
yeah.
child to be felt guilty. No, but when your ancestor was 5 years old, watching
That's not
somebody
even a
being hanged and burned, like seriously, like,
Oh,
and then your child cannot like just take some learning written down to kind of give him a sense of humanity, but it was okay for your great 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 grandfather to watch somebody hung from a tree at 5 years old. Really?
It's never been about just the sensitivity of those poor white children, right? It's always been about maintaining control. Like that's
Yeah.
like I am very grateful that I am born from somebody who was born in Nazi Germany, and knew exactly what that's like. So my genetics came over recently to this side of the world. And so being able to have that perspective and being forced to watch Roots when I was 6 years old, because my parents did not share that mentality that kids shouldn't benefit from learning about this particular type of trauma. But then also having family friends, very close family friends based in Oakland that we visited very frequently in the 70s and up till the early 80s. So, and folks there who told their perspective. So it's this whole notion, what I think and why I think there's progress is that we now, and why more people are waking up is because we now have the ability to communicate with each other and to hear other stories or other perspectives. And the more open we are to that, the better we are off for that, right? But there is a group of people who are seeming to buy into this myth that exceptionalism is the way to go, to have this, some kind of hierarchy is the way to go, when it actually is just contributing to your own enslavement yourself. And I don't mean to say that word lightly, but in fact, it's, how many people have been talking about this across mediums? I mean, we've got, in my lifetime, Bob Marley was talking about, release yourself, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, because that's such a big part of what controls us and that keeps people from waking up.
It does.
Yes, and Marie-Daphne, just to jump on what you were saying, the worst part of it was that they were actually doing postcards. So when they were lynching people on stream, they were sending to each other like postcards. I have a hard time. I'm really sorry. I have, and I know that everybody noticed that. I just can't stand it anymore. I have no patience anymore. And the lynching on the tree was what? It was the 50s.
Strange Fruit. It was before that. It was the 30s, right? So if you think about Billie Holiday's song,
there was still people like lynching people in the tree, or like having some black people disappear.
We've had it happen
people into the 50s, out the early 50s. Yeah. But I mean, so here's
we
the
just
thing.
have to go back recently too, right? And that's intentional.
So the thing, and those child like that watch, like if that was the last one was in the 50s, those child that would watch like a black person hang on the tree. How old are they now, today? So I'm just anyway. So that was like we did like some overtime tonight, huh? Okay. So I didn't say nothing. Sure. I let you talk, and like you all look happy, so so I just keep the conversation going. So this was our last book review. It was great. I really enjoyed this book review, and it's a safe space.
25, but yeah.
And so the last slide, I put together this slide that is living the 360-day commitment. It was inspired like by the repost that you did, Taryn, from my post. So liberation is a daily practice, not a destination. So for LGBTQ plus people, your identity, struggle, and joy matter every day. You are part of a continuous legacy of resistance. We've got that one. You deserve to be celebrated and supported 365 days a year, not only in June. And for allies, support LGBTQ plus people daily, not just during the Pride months. Learn about the history of the movement. Listen to an amplified, marginalized voice year-round, and take action for justice beyond June. And if you are based in the US, the midterm are coming. And, like everybody wants me to be very optimistic. So you have all to prove me that I'm wrong and that we can change history. Listen, just saying, and that we can change history and that we can do better. And like to end like with some Marsha P. Johnson, a quote from Marsha P. Johnson. I don't care if I never have anything until the day I die. All I want is my freedom.
Amen.
And she had a freedom. So this was our last.
I would just want to say.
Yes, of course, Taryn. Go ahead. You can all say something.
I say something earlier, but I'm not going to talk about that.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Your mission, folks that are still listening, is support the intersection for all of us. Don't like if you're following somebody who might be in the community and they might be, I don't know, let's just say a white gay guy, and support certain aspects of the community because they don't feel it's right or it doesn't belong. You're listening to the wrong influencers, right? So follow the people with the intersectional, because none of us win unless we all win. So lift that up and continually work. Like, it's not just about education, it's about decolonizing every aspect of our lives. Even I've been working on this decolonization for 3 decades, and I still have to make sure I stop, pause, and think through what I'm doing. Is this a colonizer's mindset or like the community, the people? So like focus on those efforts, be intersectional in your support and your work that you're doing, and inclusive. And it's not for you to judge others, but come with an open heart. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Somebody else?
Well, it's been a great year. Thank
Come
you
on,
for
Linda.
putting this together. Thank you, Margaret. This was like really awesome. And Theron, I love you to pieces. And thank you for radiating that joy. Keep it. And Linda, my favorite witch. It's been an honor to be, by your side and doing this review. And Margaret, like seriously, like it's just been like pure joy. And even though sometimes I'm not able like to finish like reading a book, I just like take notes and
Mom,
focus on
you
what
are
I
reading all of
can.
them.
Exactly. Focus on what I can, but I just love sharing various perspective. We all come from like different perspective, but together, oh my God, it's just been like great conversation. And I've learned a lot from each and every one of you. So thank you for allowing me to be in this
Oh,
space to express myself. Thank you so, so much.
oh my God. I was just thinking to end the book review like that. Now I have to tell you for which reason I love you so much. I love you so much. First, I love you so much. I love you for answering the call. When this crazy mind of yours asked you to join me for hosting this book review, you all jump in, no question, nothing. We didn't even know if I have an agenda, a plan, whatever. I always feel seems like to have a plan. But anyway, you just say yes. And what we are doing, I think, is very strong. We are coming together with different perspective. It's a space we are questioning ourselves. It's coming from a place of love and a place of growth. And I think that we are raising the right question. We don't have all the answer, but at least we are raising a question. And my hope for all of you for the new year is that I just want you to feel safe in this world. I want you to feel recognized for who you are. And I know that the three of us are very complex individuals. So there is always more like under the surface of what you are. And I wish that the world will be able to see that, to appreciate that, to treasure that, and to nurture that. And that's it. And that's my wish for you. You know, may your soul be safe in this world.
Thank you.
Okay.
We need emojis up in here.
Yeah. I wanted a constellation emoji so badly because that's how, that's the last takeaway that I had from the book was just her intersections are a constellation to me, right? They're activists, they're artists, they're caregiver. And yeah, it's not a straight line. And besides,
Yes.
straight is overrated, right? So I'm just saying.
Listen, what we're going to do right now is that we
Oh,
wish
yeah.
you all like a very beautiful Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Don't be lazy. Go to vote for the midterm. Please, like prove me wrong. Please, for our friends. And do not wait like the month of June, like to learn about Pride. And that's it. And we're going to leave you, but we're certainly going to have a little after. So everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.